All right, guys, I'm back with part three of the amazing and helpful Cody Justice review and rebuke of Jeremy Carl's work, The Unprotected Class. So if you have not seen parts one and parts two, please go back and check out those videos. We're going to be diving right in here on the third example of Jeremy Carl's liberalism. The essential thesis of this essay is that Jeremy Carl's book, while ostensibly setting out to point out and to oppose anti-white racism, smuggles in liberal priors. And because of those liberal priors, Jeremy Carl is already losing the war. He's surrendering to liberalism, which is the reason we have anti-white bias in white countries, such as America. So let's look at the examples of Jeremy Carl's bias, his liberalism, with the third example. Third example, Carl notes the ideological agenda of interracial relationships and friendships in media as a form of racial myth-making. But he doesn't oppose either in themselves, nor as socially imprudent, nor as injurious to national life, solidarity, and cohesion. Instead, he opposes them only insofar as they overrepresent the present, are not popular, and forward an unstated agenda. So this is on the topic of interracial marriage, which is very timely because my previous video was a podcast with Papa Alpaca and Forms Respecter on the Joel Webbin and Ruslan interracial marriage debate. So interracial marriage is coming up a lot right here on the channel, and I'm pretty glad it is because this is a big one. This is a deep cut, as we discussed on that podcast. Go check it out if you're interested. Let me show you something. Well, let me pull it up real quick. Okay, here it is. Look at this. U.S. approval of marriage between black people and white people from 1958 to 2021. And this is a Gallup poll that's been asked for a long time, so we have good data. There was a little bit of changes here in the wording. In 1958, it was worded marriages between white and colored people, and from 68 to 78, it was worded marriages between whites and non-whites. But we get the point, right? Interracial marriage acceptance. Look at this. 96% of America did not approve of interracial marriage in 1958. Only 4% of the United States of America told the Gallup pollsters that they would approve of a marriage between black people and white people. Scoot along one generation later. 1958 is not that long ago. If you were born in 1958, you are 67 years old right now. You are not even an old boomer. You are very, very alive. In one lifetime, we now have almost the opposite statistic. Very close to 96% of America does not approve of interracial marriage. And for us Americans, we know this, and we know it's not only that they disapprove, but they disapprove. It's not that they disapprove of interracial marriage. They disapprove of disapproving of interracial marriage, if you catch my drift. Not only do they approve of marriage between black people and white people, they despise even the thought of disapproving of marriage between black people and white people, as we saw in that debate that we covered in the podcast. Just even having that opinion is considered abominable sin amongst Christians. So the opinion that 96% of America held in 1958, in one generation later, is now considered abominable sin. This is quite a graph. I don't know if ever in history the morality of a people has changed this dramatically and this quickly. And let's call out the generation when this happened. It is the boomer generation. This is the lifetime of the boomer generation. This right here is the boomer generation. So what we must now say is that the boomers despise their parents. because the boomers consider the overwhelming view of their parents' generation to be black sin. That is the state of interracial marriage morality in the United States. Now, let's look here at this quote from Cody Justice. He says that Jeremy Carl, who's writing a book about white people, about anti-white racism, you'd think he'd be interested in interracial relationships in the United States, and he says he is. And he notes the ideological agenda of these interracial marriages, relationships, friendship in media as a form of racial myth-making. What does that mean? He says basically that Hollywood and TV and media are pushing interracial relationships in order to form a consensus, in order to do this, basically. That's how this happened. That's partially how this happened, was through propaganda. That's the propaganda that Jeremy Carl is talking about here. But he doesn't oppose it. Not really, not in itself. He doesn't oppose that in itself. Doesn't even say it's socially imprudent, nor injurious to national life and solidarity and cohesion, which is a very nice turn of phrase here from Cody. Injurious to national life, solidarity, and cohesion. What is the nation here in this sentence, class? What is the nation that Cody Justice is referring to? It's America. What is America? That's the question, really, isn't it? What is an American? What is the nation of America? That is the question, isn't it? But Jeremy Carl isn't concerned with such questions. Instead, he opposes this propaganda of interracial marriages only insofar as they overrepresent the present, as in there aren't that many interracial marriages, so it's not representative of reality, and they're not popular. Some people don't like it. Some people don't want to see it. So it's forced, and they're forwarding an agenda. But do you have any problem with that agenda, Jeremy Carl? Who knows? Let's continue on. Carl is not interested, therefore, in particular identity vis-a-vis race, but in what we might call honest representative equality of the present, or of what's popular. Presumably, if America were composed of 80% interracial relationships, or if the idea in general were wildly popular, then he would want this reflected proportionately in media displays. He admits the presence of anti-white propaganda, but cannot muster a pro-white response. What a good point. So he doesn't really say, I don't like this because it's anti-white. He says, I don't like it because it's not popular. It's not realistic. Of course it's not realistic. They're doing it on purpose, as you know, Jeremy Carl. You know this is propaganda, and it has an ideological agenda behind it. You know that, Jeremy Carl. But you cannot muster a pro-white response. That's the whole point of this rebuke of Jeremy Carl. No matter what he's doing, he can point out the unfairness of the anti-white side, but who cares about the white people as a group? We're just trying to be fair. Why can't we all just get along, as we discussed in the liberalism in part 2? Much less a distinct white identity rooting in the founding or somewhere subsequent to be embraced, preserved, and protected as essential to and exclusive of American identity. Whoa, Cody. Cody just gave you his answer to the question of what is an American? What is an American? That's the question it should be on all of our minds. Is a Somalian who is in Minnesota legally an American? Well, the answer right now, legally and in the mainstream, is yes. Yes. That's Somalian who got here maybe 5 years ago, but he is legally a citizen of America, then he's American. He's just as American as you, the English descendant of the founding fathers. You are no more American in the sense of the nation of America. What is an American person? The American identity. What is the American identity? You, American man who was a white English descendant of the people who founded this country, you are no more American than that Somalian. No more American. That is the despised liberal curse of civic nationalism. Not ethnic nationalism, but civic nationalism. It's a legal fiction, a legal invention. You are legally American, so you are just as American as anyone else. And ethnic nationalism, tying your American identity to your roots, to your ancestry, that is horrible racism. That is Nazism. Such goes our times. Such goes the anti-white propaganda that Jeremy Carl impotently attempts to point out. Let's look at an example here where Carl raises the play Hamilton, named after the white founding father, Alexander Hamilton. Specifically, Carl notes its color-conscious casting. Most of the cast of the original production, he reports, were African Americans, with two exceptions: a Puerto Rican American, add another to his Grand Master list, and an Asian American. Remarkably, Carl doesn't oppose this, but honors it as giving ownership of the founding to all Americans, and in a hip-hop context, no less, a praiseworthy monument to national integration. National integration and calling these people all Americans, revealing Jeremy Carl's liberalism here in the definition of what is an American. Apparently, American is civic nationalism, not ethnic nationalism. Carl, however, is schizophrenic. Pages earlier, he excoriates, that's the word. Pages earlier, he excoriates Wakanda, the idea of a high-tech Afrocentric paradise untouched by whites, as something that is beyond historically illiterate, demonstrating his willingness and ability to target and fire. Or, to give him more credit, Carl is precise in his commitment to betrayal. When it comes to the dilution of the American inheritance in Hamilton, he is conciliatory and even laudatory. But when it comes to the Afro-paradise of Wakanda, as envisioned in Black Panther, Carl is ruthlessly defensive of the truth of Africa in history. In their case, it never happened and never could have happened. In our case, it has happened, and it's a good thing. Sympathetic indulgence to commend Negro Hamilton, despite its historical absurdity. Surgical rigor to condemn Wakanda forever, despite its admitted fiction. In both cases, he sides with the minority. To be fair, Carl highlights the villain of Hamilton, King George III, played by white man Jonathan Groff, is portrayed with a foppish gay insouciance. Oh man, I'm messing up on your big words today, Cody. Insouciance. Gay insouciance. And is a figure of mockery, excluded from the American story. Thus, Carl remarks coyly, one suspects this is no mere accident of casting. He then admits the black casting is erasure of history and truth, that it confused his own children, and that it agrees in spirit with the removal of American monuments, culminating in an unsettling message. But why would Carl be unsettled given his prior praise? Carl admits such casting marginalizes white stories and white history, but he is not being forthright or consistent from either side. He had already admitted that America was overwhelmingly white, which means that white history in America is American history. Yet, at the same time, why should he care that the particularities of race in said history are being misrepresented in the present, given that virtually anyone can become an American in his view? As he notes, the founders were, in fact, white men, but it is possible to acknowledge this without denying the universality of their message or the ability of all Americans of all racial backgrounds to embrace the founding today. He never tells his reader that if the founding laws and sentiment were applied today, only one type of his many Americans would be welcome as Americans, and that he would be laughed out of the room. I think this is a great example from Cody here. It just shows that those who cannot get rid of their liberal priors, their liberal axioms, they cannot mount much of a defense against the disease that is killing us, against the anti-white suicide of all white countries. If you can't say that white people deserve to be a people, then you can't really save white people. And it makes you think that Jeremy Carl really doesn't want to save white people at all. If you are willing to say that anyone can become an American, then what is an American? If it's everything, it's nothing. And for myself, I often like to look to other white countries that don't have quite as complicated of a past. For example, the English. The English are being replaced in England The English hate the English just as much as the Americans hate the Americans. Why are the English not allowed to have England? Did the English founding include some sort of universal message that all racial backgrounds can embrace? Because I don't think so. I think England is just where the English come from. I think England is just the land of the Ingles. I think England is for the English. And I think everybody kind of believed that until about, I don't know, 1958 maybe? Somewhere around there. I think this is a new idea. I think it's a suicidal idea. And until we root it out and cut it out and pull it out and burn it out and despise it and throw it away, we're not going to stop this problem. We're just going to wither and die because our roots are diseased. And so, unfortunately, Jeremy Carl here cannot provide us that. He can't just say, on the one hand, well, it's pretty great that, this play, Hamilton, gives ownership of the founding to all Americans in a hip-hop context as a praiseworthy monument to national integration. And then at the same breath, say, such casting marginalizes white stories and white history. How can you do that? How can you say both of those things? It's an erasure of history and truth. If it's an erasure of history and truth, how is it good to give this to all Americans? What is an American? What is an American? That's the question. And I would agree with Cody Justice here, where I don't believe that the founding laws and sentiment agree on that question with Jeremy Carl. I don't think they would agree that an American is anybody who loves our ideas. They thought an American was them. And you have funny quotes from people like Benjamin Franklin that are like, I don't know about the Germans. I don't know about the Germans. This is an English country. Those Germans are a problem, right? And such sentiment would be laughable today, where all white people are dying and being replaced in literally every country where they live. But those founders would, I believe, laugh Jeremy Carl out of the room with his type of civic nationalist erasure of white stories and white history. Nope, you can't do it, Jeremy Carl. You cannot claim to be protecting white history and white stories while still saying white people don't deserve to have an identity. White people don't deserve to have a country because their countries are universal ideas. Nope, not going to do it. Not going to work. All right, we'll leave it there. I spend too long talking. Sorry, this is a multi-parter, but it's a good thing to walk through because I'm speaking to my audience who mostly agree with me, but it's really good to kind of pick apart, as Cody has done here, those who ostensibly are on our side, pointing out anti-white racism, who still maintain that liberal heart, the liberal core of their definition of things like nationalism. Is it civic nationalism? Carl would say yes. Is it ethno-nationalism? Well, that's scary. Now you're a Nazi. What are you doing? What are you doing, Nazi? Talking about ethno-nationalism? What are you, a Nazi? You're going to kill people? You want a Holocaust? No, we want a home. We want a home. Are we allowed that? Or do we have to give that up? Is this the World Economic Forum of nationalism where you will have no home and you'll be happy? Because that's what it feels like. It's cultural, ethnic dispossession. We are being dispossessed of our identity and our home. And I believe that does deserve a defense. I pray this video was helpful to you. May God be glorified in all things. In Jesus' name, amen.